was a cold, gray morning in Westfield, New Jersey on March 15th, 2018, when the routine calm of suburban life was shattered. Ben Miller, a 16-year-old high school junior, woke to the sound of his alarm, groggily climbing out of bed to prepare for school. The Miller home was usually bustling at this hour, with his father, Trooper Adam Miller, an early riser who loved starting his day with coffee and the local news. But today, the house felt eerily silent. "Dad?" Ben called out, stepping into the hallway. There was no response. As he descended the stairs, Ben noticed the den door slightly ajar, the faint hum of the TV filtering through. Pushing the door open, he froze. His father lay slumped on the recliner, his head tilted unnaturally to the side, eyes closed. A dark stain spread across his chest, and a gun rested loosely near his right hand. His father lay slumped on the recliner, his chest rising and falling. Only 5% of those who watch my videos are subscribed. If you are enjoying my contents, please subscribe, as this helps me a lot. Thank you, and enjoy this video. Ben's scream echoed through the house, jolting his mother, Camille, awake. She rushed into the room, her mind refusing to accept the sight before her. Adam, her husband of 18 years, the man she had built a life with, was gone. Ben fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling as he dialed 9911. The dispatcher's calm, methodical voice contrasted sharply with his sobs. "Please send someone. My dad, he's not breathing." The police arrived within minutes, their flashing lights painting the quiet neighborhood in harsh reds and blues. Detective Rachel Diaz, a seasoned investigator with the New Jersey State Police, was among the first on the scene. The sight of Adam Miller, a fellow officer, lifeless in his own home, struck a chord even in her well-trained detachment. At first glance, the scene suggested suicide. The gun, a standard-issue Glock, was positioned as though Adam had ended his own life. Ryan and Blanche were with the prisoner when they found him, but as Diaz examined the details, she noticed subtle discrepancies. The angle of the gunshot wound seemed off, the placement of the gun too deliberate. And then there was the peculiar absence of gunpowder residue on Adam's dominant hand. Diaz's instincts told her this was no ordinary case. What had happened in this seemingly picture-perfect home? The Miller family had always appeared to embody the American dream. Adam Miller, a 42-year-old state trooper, was respected by his peers, adored by his family, and admired in his community. His career was a testament to his dedication, with accolades and commendations from both his department and the public for his service. He was the kind of man who could break up a domestic dispute with a calm, commanding presence, or spend hours at community events, shaking hands and taking photos. His wife, Camille, was equally well regarded. As a nurse at Westfield General Hospital, she had spent years caring for her patients with a gentle but efficient demeanor. Together, Adam and Camille had built a life centered around their only child, Ben. Their two-story home on Maple Drive was modest but cozy, the lawn always meticulously maintained. Social media added to the illusion of perfection. On Facebook, their profile was filled with smiling family pictures, vacations at the shore, backyard barbecues, and holiday gatherings. But behind the facade, cracks had begun to form. Camille was the first to notice the subtle changes in Adam. Once a man who never missed a family dinner, he began staying late at work more often. His cheerful demeanor grew muted. The jokes that once brought laughter to their home became rarer. At first, Camille chalked it up to stress. Being a state trooper wasn't easy, and Adam had always taken his responsibilities seriously. But then there were the nights he didn't come home until after midnight, the times he would pull away when she reached for his hand. And most telling of all, the emotional distance that crept into their once close-knit marriage. "I don't know what's going on with him," Camille confided in her sister one afternoon. "It's like he's here, but not really here. He says he's fine, but I know he's not." Even Ben, though preoccupied with his teenage life, noticed the tension. The once vibrant father-son bond was now punctuated by awkward silences. Adam still attended Ben's soccer games and school events, but there was a hollowness in his cheers. Detective Rachel Diaz, reviewing these accounts, saw the pattern all too clearly. Marriages didn't crumble overnight. They eroded slowly, piece by piece. The question nagging at her now was whether Adam's deteriorating personal life had any connection to his untimely death. Her suspicions deepened when she found an envelope tucked away in Adam's nightstand. Inside were photos of him with a woman who was not Camille. The pair stood close in the pictures, their smiles wide and unguarded. The woman's name, she would soon discover, was Sarah Harper. She had taken the pictures for the magazine, and the headline made Sarah's hair turn gray. Sarah Harper was a force to be reckoned with. At 36, she had built a reputation as a relentless and sharp-tongued civil rights attorney. Her fiery courtroom speeches and high-profile cases against police misconduct had earned her both admirers and enemies. She was no stranger to controversy, and she thrived in the spotlight. Married to Richard Harper, a wealthy tech executive, Sarah's life on paper seemed enviable. During the 27 years Sarah's life on paper seemed enviable, their modern glass and steel home in an upscale neighborhood was the picture of affluence. Sarah and Richard were often seen at charity galas, their arms looped around each other in perfectly staged photographs. But Sarah's life was far from perfect. Her marriage was strained, held together more by appearances than affection. Richard, once attentive and loving, had grown distant over the years, consumed by his career. His late-night meetings, frequent business trips, and emotional unavailability left Sarah feeling increasingly alone. It was during one of her most grueling cases, a lawsuit against the state police, that Sarah met Adam Miller. He had been called as a witness for the defense, representing the department. Though they initially stood on opposing sides of the courtroom, their conversations outside it were surprisingly warm. Adam, unlike many officers Sarah encountered, was respectful and genuinely interested in her perspective. They often sat together, talking about work and life. Their connection deepened quickly. What began as professional courtesy evolved into long phone calls and clandestine coffee meetings. Adam found in Sarah a fiery passion he hadn't felt in years, while Sarah saw in Adam a grounded stability she craved. But their affair was anything but stable. Sarah's text to Adam, uncovered during the investigation, painted a picture of a woman deeply invested in their relationship. "I've never felt like this before," one message read. "You're the only thing keeping me sane." Adam, however, had reservations. While he was drawn to Sarah's intensity, he also felt trapped between her demands and his responsibilities at home. He began pulling away, trying to untangle himself from the affair without causing further damage. For Sarah, this withdrawal was intolerable. "You don't get to walk away from me," one message read. Another was more ominous. "If I can't have you, no one will." Detective Diaz now had a prime suspect. Detective Rachel Diaz sat at her desk, poring over the evidence collected so far. Adam Miller's death was no ordinary case. Every layer she peeled back revealed another tangled thread in a web of secrets. Most damning of all was the burner phone discovered in Adam's desk drawer, a device Camille claimed she had never seen. The phone's messages, extracted by forensic experts, told a story Diaz had seen too often: a marriage strained by infidelity. The texts between Adam and Sarah Harper began innocently enough, Conversations about their shared frustrations in life, his with the pressures of being a trooper, hers with the stress of a high-profile legal career, slowly transitioned to flirtation. The two of them with their backgrounds in sex work. Then came the declarations of love, promises to leave their respective spouses, and discussions of a future together. But the tone of the messages shifted as the months wore on. "You promised you'd tell her," Sarah wrote in one message, dated just 2 weeks before Adam's death. "Don't lie to me again, Adam. I'm running out of patience." Adam's replies were hesitant, filled with attempts to placate her. "I need more time," he wrote. "Please understand, this isn't easy." What had begun as a passionate escape from their lives had become volatile and dangerous. Sarah's texts grew increasingly erratic in tone, pleas for Adam's love, interspersed with accusations of betrayal. One chilling message, sent just days before his death, read, "If you don't want me, maybe she won't have you either." Diaz shared the messages with her team. "We've got a person of interest," she said, her voice steady. "But we need more than just text to prove Sarah Harper had a hand in Adam's death." The detectives combed through Adam's emails, call logs, and financial records. Their investigation painted a clearer picture of a man who had been slowly unraveling under the weight of his double life. Interviews with Adam's colleagues revealed a man who had changed in subtle but noticeable ways. "He was distracted," said Trooper Jake Collins, Adam's closest friend on the force. "Caleb's best friend was leaving him," Adam told him. "He thinks it's for the best." Adam was always the guy you could count on, but the last few months, he wasn't himself. "I'd catch him staring off into space during briefings or snapping at rookies over minor mistakes. It wasn't like him." Even more telling were the reports of Adam's behavior outside of work. Camille's account confirmed what his colleagues had noticed. Some nights he wouldn't come home until long after Ben was in bed, Camille told Diaz. "When I'd ask where he was, he'd make up some excuse about overtime or catching up on paperwork. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep down, I knew there was someone else." Sarah Harper, meanwhile, was proving difficult to track down. Diaz's team discovered she had taken a leave of absence from her law firm just days after Adam's death. Her husband, Richard Harper, was equally elusive, refusing to comment when approached by reporters who had caught wind of the investigation. But it wasn't just Sarah's disappearance that raised red flags. Financial records revealed an unsettling detail. Adam had recently updated his life insurance policy, naming Sarah as a beneficiary alongside Camille. The policy, worth $500,000, provided a possible motive for Sarah to escalate her demands. It wasn't just about love. It was about survival. Camille Miller sat at the kitchen table, staring at the framed photograph of her family on the wall. It was taken 2 summers ago, during their vacation to Cape May. Adam had his arm around her, his smile bright and genuine as Ben stood in front of them holding a kite. Looking at it now, Camille felt a pang of sorrow and anger. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Now it felt like something was missing. She had always thought she and Adam had a strong marriage. Sure, they had their arguments. What couple didn't? But for nearly 2 decades, they had weathered life's storms together. Yet the signs of trouble had been there, even if she hadn't wanted to see them. Camille recalled the first time she felt something was off. It was late September, and Adam had come home hours later than usual. His excuse was thin, something about a late shift and catching up on reports. He said, but there had been an edge to his voice, a nervous energy she couldn't quite place. As the months went on, Adam's behavior grew more erratic. He was more irritable, snapping at her over trivial matters. Nights that were once spent together on the couch watching their favorite shows were replaced by Adam retreating to his den. When Camille confronted him, Adam dismissed her concerns. "Work's been rough," he'd say, avoiding her gaze. "You know how it is." She wanted to believe him. but the distance between them was undeniable. The discovery of Sarah Harper shattered whatever illusions Camille had been clinging to. The texts and photos made it impossible to deny Adam had been unfaithful. Camille's heartbreak was compounded by anger. She thought about the sacrifices she had made for their family, the long hours she worked as a nurse to help pay the bills, the nights she stayed up waiting for him to come home safely. And this was how he repaid her? "I don't know if I ever really knew him," Camille confided to her sister during one of their late-night phone calls. "He was my husband, my partner, and now I feel like I've been living with a stranger." But there was something else gnawing at Camille, something she hadn't shared with anyone. The night Adam died, she had woken briefly to the sound of voices downstairs. She hadn't thought much of it at the time, assuming Adam was watching TV or talking on the phone. Now, she wondered if it had been something more. Had Sarah Harper been in their home that night? Detective Diaz took Camille's account seriously. The possibility that Sarah had confronted Adam in his own home was chilling, but it fit the narrative that was beginning to emerge. "Camille," Diaz said gently during one of their interviews, "you might not know the full story yet, but we're going to find out the truth." Camille nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Camille," the Diaz hesitated, "I want to tell you, Thomas, something. I just want justice for Adam," she whispered. "He wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve this." In the days leading up to Adam Miller's death, the tension in his life reached a breaking point. He had become a man caught between two worlds, the life he had built with Camille and Ben, and the whirlwind affair with Sarah Harper that threatened to destroy it all. On March 11, 2018, just 4 days before his death, Adam confided in his best friend and fellow trooper Jake Collins during a rare moment of honesty. They were sitting in a patrol car during a quiet shift when Adam finally broke his silence. "I screwed up, Jake," Adam admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. Jake, who had known Adam for over a decade, was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "There's someone else," Adam said, staring out the windshield. "It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did, and now I don't know how to fix it." Jake listened quietly as Adam recounted how the affair had started, how it spiraled into something he couldn't control, and how Sarah's demands were becoming more intense. "She wants me to leave Camille," Adam continued. "She thinks we can just start over, but it's not that simple. I love my family. I don't want to lose them." Jake was torn between his loyalty to Adam and his anger at what his friend had done. "You need to end it," he said firmly, "before it gets worse." "I've tried," Adam replied, his voice breaking, "but she won't let go. She keeps saying things, threatening things." Jake didn't know what to say. He could see the fear in Adam's eyes, a fear he had never seen in his strong, steady friend before. The following day, Adam made a decision. He called Sarah and told her it was over. "We can't keep doing this," he said, pacing his den as he spoke on the phone. "I can't live like this anymore. It's not fair to anyone, Camille, Ben, or even you." Sarah's response was cold. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just going to throw me away?" "It's not like that," Adam said. "I care about you, but this isn't right. I need to fix things with my family. You think you can just walk away?" Sarah's voice was laced with anger. "You don't get to decide when this ends, Adam. I won't let you." Adam hung up, shaken. He knew Sarah was upset, but he hoped she would eventually accept his decision and move on. What he didn't know was that Sarah had no intention of letting go. Detective Diaz and her team were beginning to piece together the timeline of Adam's final days, but they still needed to establish a clear motive for Sarah Harper. The burner phone messages and Camille's account of Adam's behavior provided valuable context, but they didn't yet prove that Sarah had a reason to kill him. The breakthrough came when one of the junior detectives on Diaz's team, Officer Marcus Klein, dug into Sarah's financial records. Sarah had lied to them. "Detective," Klein said, dropping a folder on Diaz's desk, "you're going to want to see this." Diaz opened the folder and scanned the documents. They revealed a grim financial picture. Sarah and her husband, Richard Harper, were drowning in debt. Despite their outwardly glamorous lifestyle, the Harpers had taken out multiple loans to cover failed business ventures and were on the verge of bankruptcy. One detail stood out: a recent deposit of $10,000 into Sarah's personal account, transferred from an unknown source. "Where did this come from?" Diaz asked. "We're still working on that," Klein replied. "But there's more. Adam Miller's life insurance policy was updated 6 months ago. Guess who's listed as a beneficiary?" Diaz's eyes widened. "Sarah Harper." $500,000, Klein said. "If Adam dies, she gets a payout big enough to solve all her financial problems." The evidence painted a clear picture. Sarah had more than just emotional reasons to want Adam dead. She had financial reasons, too. The crime scene at the Miller home had initially appeared to suggest suicide, but forensic evidence quickly cast doubt on that narrative. The gun, a standard-issue Glock, was positioned near Adam's right hand, but its placement was too perfect, almost as if it had been staged. Furthermore, the gunshot wound to Adam's chest was at an angle that would have been difficult for him to inflict on himself. "Look at the trajectory," the forensic analyst explained to Diaz during a briefing. "The bullet entered at a slightly upward angle." "No, for someone shooting themselves in the chest, that's unusual." Powder residue tests revealed another inconsistency. While there was residue on Adam's shirt, there was none on his dominant hand. This strongly suggested that someone else had fired the gun. Then there was the matter of the voices Camille had heard the night of the murder. "It was late," Camille told Diaz during an interview. "I didn't think much of it at the time. I just assumed Adam was on the phone or something." But now Camille was certain the voices she had heard were Adam and Sarah. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera confirmed that a car matching Sarah's had been parked near the Miller home that night. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act, Diaz concluded. This was premeditated. The final pieces of the puzzle came together when detectives interviewed Sarah's co-workers and friends. Several of them recounted conversations in which Sarah had expressed frustration with Adam. "She was obsessed with him," one colleague said. "She talked about him constantly, how he was going to leave his wife for her, how they were going to start a new life together. But recently, she'd been angry. He said he was backing out of their plans." One friend revealed a particularly chilling detail. "Sarah told me she was going to confront Adam," the friend said. "She said she wasn't going to let him ruin her life." By April 2, 2018, Detective Diaz had gathered enough evidence to secure a warrant for Sarah Harper's arrest. The burner phone messages, financial motives, surveillance footage, and forensic inconsistencies all pointed to her involvement in Adam Miller's death. The arrest was executed with precision. Sarah was at her law office when officers arrived. She was in the middle of a meeting with a client when they entered the room. "Sarah Harper, you're under arrest for the murder of Adam Miller," an officer announced. Her colleagues watched in stunned silence as Sarah stood, her face pale but composed. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice steady. Sarah laughed. She had written a mistake. She said in a voice high with pride that she would never repeat the mistake. "You're making a mistake." As the officers cuffed her and led her out of the building, reporters who had been tipped off about the arrest swarmed the scene, cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward. "Sarah, did you kill Adam Miller?" one reporter shouted. "Why would you do this to a state trooper?" another asked. Sarah said nothing. At the station, Detective Diaz began the interrogation. Sarah maintained her innocence, claiming she hadn't seen Adam on the night of his death. "I was at home," she insisted. "I didn't kill him. I loved him." Diaz leaned forward, her tone calm but firm. "The evidence says otherwise, Sarah. You were seen near his house. Your fingerprints were found on the burner phone. The financial records, the texts, it's all there." Sarah's composure began to crack. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "Adam was lying to me. He promised we'd be together, and then he just threw me away like I was nothing." Diaz pressed on. "Is that why you confronted him that night? Did he tell you it was over and you couldn't handle it?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but she remained silent. Diaz knew she wouldn't get a confession that day, but it didn't matter. The evidence was enough to proceed with charges. The trial of Sarah Harper began in October 2019, capturing national attention. Courtrooms were packed with reporters, legal experts, and curious onlookers eager to witness the fallout of the tragic affair. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Evelyn Marks, methodically laid out their case. Marks painted Sarah as a woman driven by obsession and desperation, willing to go to any length to keep Adam in her life. Adam and Marks left Kmart's, but their worlds collided when Kmart's left. Adam Miller was a man trying to rebuild his family, Marks told the jury during her opening statement. But Sarah Harper couldn't accept that. Her jealousy, her financial struggles, and her inability to let go led to his death. The prosecution presented damning evidence, surveillance footage showing Sarah's car near the Miller home the night of the murder. Forensic analysis proving the gunshot wound was not self-inflicted. Text messages revealing Sarah's increasingly unhinged state of mind. Perhaps the most emotional testimony came from Camille Miller, who took the stand to recount the night she lost her husband. "I woke up to hear voices," Camille said, her voice trembling. "I didn't realize it at the time, but now I know it was Adam and Sarah. If I'd gone downstairs, maybe I could have stopped it." Ben Miller, now 17, also testified, describing how he had found his father's body that fateful morning. His testimony brought many in the courtroom to tears. The defense, led by high-profile attorney Jonathan Rayner, attempted to portray Sarah as a victim. Sarah Harper was manipulated by Adam Miller, Rayner argued. He made promises he couldn't keep, played with her emotions, and left her to pick up the pieces. The defense called Sarah to the stand, where she painted herself as a heartbroken woman pushed to the brink. "I loved Adam," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He made me believe we had a future together, but I never wanted to hurt him." Her performance was compelling, but the jury couldn't ignore the mountain of evidence against her. On a crisp October morning, the jury returned their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Sarah Harper was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20. As she was led away in handcuffs, she glanced back at the courtroom, her face a mixture of defiance and despair. Soon the two were clasped hand to hand. The trial's conclusion brought some closure to the Miller family, but the scars remained. Camille sold the house on Maple Drive and moved to a smaller home in a nearby town. She continued working as a nurse, throwing herself into her job to distract from her grief. Ben struggled to cope with the loss of his father and the media frenzy that had followed their family. He transferred to a new school to escape the whispers and stares. Detective Diaz, reflecting on the case, felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. She had solved the puzzle, but the cost had been devastating for everyone involved. "Cases like this aren't just about solving a crime," Diaz said in an interview. "They're about understanding the human condition, how love, betrayal, and desperation can drive people to unimaginable acts." The story of Adam Miller's death became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragile line between passion and obsession. The Miller home on Maple Drive remained empty for months before it was eventually sold to a new family. But for the community, It would always be a somber landmark, a place where love and secrets collided with deadly consequences. And for Camille and Ben, the memory of Adam, flawed but deeply loved, remained a part of their lives, a reminder of the cost of choices and the resilience of those left behind. If you enjoyed this dive into the mystery, don't forget to subscribe to True Crime OCS for more chilling stories from history's darkest corners. Drop your thoughts, theories, and questions in the comments below. Let's untangle the truth together. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.